Next on the agenda, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is what we call the Clergy Roundtable. Is that the?
That's what I see here.
Yeah, okay. And our thought process behind this was we would have priests and deacons who are Eagle Scouts talk about the influence of scouting in their decision for vocation. So I know Paul is an Eagle. So if you would come to the front, please.
All right, Paul.
I know that Father Chris is an Eagle.
Go on, Father. There you go. Come on.
How about you, Father Ken?
Does life count?
Yes,
I can't sit with eagles. I'm a life.
you're a priest.
I'm a priest. You like? I'll speak as a priest.
Okay.
The life for lifers are the best scouts.
When did you each first hear about Scout? How old were you?
Well, for me, I was fortunate enough that in Baton Rouge, where I grew up, my school, as an elementary Catholic school, Our Lady of Mercy, they had a troop that they sponsored. It started with Cub Scouts and, of course, into Boy Scouts. My mother, as she was always pushing me for things, was even helped out in the Cub Scouts, and both of my parents being Catholic, I'm just trying to say that they give me a lot of influence and push me on to do my best, work hard in Scouts, and get the Eagle Scout. But I think it wasn't so much getting the Eagle Scout, it was just a good environment, of a Catholic environment. My Catholic troop, it was always very important when we went on our monthly camping trip. I'd always say that the leaders would be, okay, we're getting up, early Sunday morning. We got to get up early enough, get up, get everything packed up and go, because we got to make mass, say the 12 noon mass. So, I mean, that was something ingrained, the importance of going to church. And of course, there were other activities that we, the Scouts, helped out at the Catholic Church that came up there. So, that was always pretty prominent enough. And I guess the idea of being reverent, to serve others, I think it just all, to serve others as a Scout is similar to what we in the Catholic Church say to serve, others as well. Everything seemed to, go together. I didn't see any conflicts between my religion and the Scouts, and it led me to, like you said, talk about being humble, hungry, and then trying to evangelize. And then, for me, for my calling of, as things went, I mean, even through my school, it was presented to me. I went into a seminary starting in ninth grade, and I was in seminary for 4 years, high school, and then I did 1 year of college in the seminary. I think some of that, with my Catholic upbringing, wanting to be service, was something that led me to first go into my for seminary, my education there, and then in college I made the decision to take another path, and that's when I got into medicine, went to medical school and all, and then still tried to keep my faith going, still try to use the values that we learned in Scouts of, hard work. And as a doctor, I'm a family physician, so I enjoyed, helping and serving others. And so all of that's been sort of ingrained into me. And then, 8 years ago, my thoughts sort of was, well, do I want to be a deacon? Do I not? And I kind of put it off. And then I finally told the good Lord, I said, well, if you ask me to be a deacon, I'll become a deacon. And so a month later, here comes a priest. My parish priest says, Paul, what are you thinking about being a deacon? So anyway, I got started on all of that. But I mean, it's that idea of to volunteer, and that's some of what scouting is. It's how we volunteer for services. And so all of that all kind of, tied in. And then, we moved to Biloxi, and I went through my deacon formation. I told them at that time, I said, oh, you've got someone that's a Catholic chaplain. And it was like some of the priests at the time were a Catholic chaplain. So I said, I would like to, help out if I can. Well, then a couple of years later, they said, well, the priest there doesn't want to do it anymore. Would you, Paul, be willing to do that? So I took upon that to be the Catholic chaplain. I was thinking I was going to end up doing more, but no one told me and gave me a job description what to do. It ended up being we just had one person in the council in the diocese that was kind of responsible for a Scout Sunday that would, coordinate and get everybody together and get their Scout awards. And I would show up with the bishop there and we'd give them their Scout awards. And that was it. But then just late last year, the person that was doing the Scout Sundays just decided didn't want to do it. And through some ways, it just ended up, I saw there was a need further to do things, get things better, and then I got an email saying they was going to have this conference here, and I thought that would be a good idea, and I said, well, we need to get some other people to take the position of working on the committee, and so that's when, as a doctor, I knew Bob and Marjorie Favre, very strong Catholics. They were my patients, and I've taken care of them for many years. And Bob's very active with the Scouts. I said, this is who I want, the two people to take their place. So we're here just to learn what all you people have been through. And so we want to be able to take what we learned, your energy and your enthusiasm, and just push that through our diocese. I'm going to have to go sit down with the bishop, and he's told me he's been a Scout, so he knows all about that. So, yeah. Anyway, here, this is where I am. That's my witness today. So,
Thank you.
okay.
I think, Father, if you can tell us, when did you first become aware of Scouts, and then where did it take?
Well, my mom was the one that got me aware
Your mom,
of Scouts.
good.
I didn't think about going into Scouts. It was Cub Scouts or something. That's how I first got started. So that's how I first became aware. And then, and you get and maybe through your father or something and trying to achieve things, I got intrigued, well, you got this rank, that rank, this rank, you kept pushing to try to get those ranks. And then the next thing it was get into the Boy Scouts, and then, oh, you want to be a den leader for the Cub Scouts? Yeah, I'll do that. It all.
Where's your dad who's 101 now?
Well, yeah, he was a Life Scout, Vicky. He was a Life Scout. He liked the Scouts as well. So I guess my parents were part of what got me started.
When's your dad's birthday?
My dad's birthday is August the 2nd, and he'll then be 101.
Oh, this 101 this summer. All right. Yeah, well, and my dad, they're from the same. My dad's a little older. July 25th, 1923. So he just passed actually at 101 this past September. But he was not a camper. He went on one camping trip with me in second or third grade with the Cub Scouts, and he was like a fish out of water. And it was at Camp McKee in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, and that was the first and last camping trip that my dad went with me in the Scouts. Nonetheless, I think my parents encouraged me to join in Cub Scouts, and just sitting here kind of pondering on that calling to be a priest, what stands out for me and maybe as a priest is the idea of being a disciple of Jesus and living out our baptismal call and being confirmed, very much that belief that each of us have charisms for building up the body of Christ. And that while we have the gifts and the fruits of the Spirit, in a sense, to help us become more and more like Christ, the charisms are meant to be given away for the building up of the body of Christ. And that as I look back, thinking of the scout leaders, the pack leaders, and their willingness of sacrificing, of what Dylan talked about, the blessing of scouts is you have a goal and you have sort of this systematic steps that you do to get there, but then you have to have the leaders to help you along that way. And I think that's something that the idea of mentoring and encouraging the youth is such the richness of that, and how much that changes these young people's lives. That really is the beauty and blessing of the Scout movement. Are the leaders who, do I remember all their names? I've forgotten a lot of their names, but these men and women from different backgrounds who gave every week, and for these boys to be in the pack troop and to lead these camp outs, and for the dads who weren't big campers and it just wasn't their thing. And so that, I think, is something that really resonates with me, the idea of you're being called, that being a disciple of Jesus isn't just about yourself, it's about serving and building up the body of Christ. And to sort of paraphrase Pope Francis, and he might have said this in one of his early encyclicals, he says, the river's not for the river is for the fish. The idea of you're not there just for yourself, but you're, as a disciple of Jesus, it's about you're there to help others to be brought along and grow in that relationship with Christ. And so that, I think, is what captures the richness of the scouting movement for me, is being able to go through this process with those scout leaders from the time I was 7 to 18, and thinking of all those men and women who helped me along that way to get to be Eagle. And so that experience over my childhood and adolescence really helped to make me who I am. And in that sense, is it really just seeds being planted that at the time you're not aware of kind of your calling in life, but that when that sense of the Spirit coming upon you and really awakening for me, I was about 24 when just had a really profound experience of the Spirit, that kind of spurred me on in kind of figuring out what God was calling me to what was my life vocation. And so over the next couple years, getting involved in different ministries, that question is posed, have you thought about being a priest? And when you get more than one person who says that to you, at first I was like, no, I've never really thought about it. But when you get multiple people posing that question to you, then it sort of came to that place of really praying about it. Indeed, that was God's call for me. And is that something that the scouting movement can offer, is in our troops, is this building up in an intentional way, in a systematic way with the religious emblems, a way of the scout leaders, the parish pastor, to sit down with these young people and talk about the emblems. And so I was sharing at lunch with Father Troy. I just sat down with about 10 boys from St. Leo's. They're in the scout troop from sponsored by the Methodist congregation, but they're two of their scout leaders are parishioners at St. Leo's. and having the opportunity to sit down with each of them over a couple hours and just that little bit of engagement going through their Parvuli Dei workbook. I mean, it just was this sort of awakening of their personalities, their way of answering the questions. I mean, it was sort of this epiphany of each of these young people. And for you who've been in scouting for so long, I mean, isn't that the richness of seeing those under your leadership sort of growing and developing? So that, I think, it's while I would say the explicit sort of Christian aspect of in scouting, as I look back, I remember going on one sort of Catholic scouting retreat, and some of the scouting leaders were it's a little awkward to lead prayer with your scouts, and I found them remembering they're kind of uncomfortable leading prayer. And maybe that's part of it is with scouting is getting with our scout leaders and giving them that confidence to lead prayer with their the scouts, that this is sort of the air we breathe as Catholics, and that it's not that big a deal, to lead night prayer in the campsite or something from the Liturgy of Hours, for instance. But that's just a little bit of my walk. I'll just conclude with, I think, that something that, the ties of friendship do not end with death. That's one of the opening lines for the vigil service for someone who's passed. And my Eagle Scout project was fixing up our Catholic cemetery, repainting the crosses on top of the pillars as you entered the cemetery. So I was finished, and it was sort of this culmination. I've helped lead the troop in fixing up the cemetery, and recall sort of the culmination was backing up and knocking over Mr. Shriver's parents' tombstone. And I thought, I'll just lift that up. Well, tombstones weigh about 400 or 500 pounds. So that and to this day, I do not know who put that tombstone back up. But the next time I came around, it was standing upright. But, as a scout going up to Mr. Shriver and saying, "I'm really sorry that I knocked over your parents' tombstone." You own up to your what you did. So, I mean, even in sort of the sort of lowest point, there's something that is scouting. You kind of take responsibility for the good and bad, and own up. And the beauty and blessing is as a disciple of our Lord, as a Catholic, and as a scout that I took from my experience. So, thanks.
I thought I would just say a few things about my own journey through Scouts. Not making it to Eagle, but still doing a lot. I had a bit of experience with Cub Scouts, but I think on my experience of that, and this is like to all the Cub Masters and Scout Masters, the social dimension of it was a bigger factor to me than any of the programmatic aspect of it. And I didn't fit in with a particular social group. And so I think the program, whatever they were trying to achieve with me in the activities in the Cub Scouts, although it was a long time ago, it would have gotten lost on me in the fact that, the guys I was interacting with, they had their own kind of clique, if you will, in them, and they weren't being mean. They were just friends being friends, and I was not part of their circle. Similarly, kind of in Boy Scouts, I skipped Webelos for some reason. I don't remember why, but anyway, in Boy Scouts, it was really exciting at first. There was a cohort of guys a bit older, and we there were a few of us younger ones. We really looked up to those older ones. Most of them got their Eagles, and we were on some camping trips with them, and had those. The Klondike Derby. There's one that stands out. Klondike Derby. Does anybody remember that one? Klondike Derby. The Land Between the Lakes, somewhere, or not the, well, somewhere, probably scout camp. I'm not sure which one it was, Manchester, but and it happened to snow that weekend, so it was exciting, and that was so impressionable and such a great activity that was bigger than ourselves, because we were achieving something together, and I think that had a lot of value to it. But when those guys, they didn't seem to incorporate us into things as the younger ones, and they did their thing, but we were just kind of extras. So after they all kind of became Eagles and went on with whatever else they were doing, there wasn't a lot left of the troop. And so I made it to life, and everything was kind of evaporating around me. And I think that was a part of it. So what I didn't connect with, I looked at it as personal achievement, but not leadership training. I didn't know what kind of leadership I didn't understand. And so I think, insofar as the Eagle Scout Project is not about what you do, but it's about what you organize others to do, how important that is. So, but that's what I didn't know anything about at the time. At the same time, I did recognize the sense of virtues that were to be fostered, personal virtues, and scout law making sense to me and all that kind of thing. And so I completely bought into that. And I think, with respect to vocation, I think I was kind of deaf or blind to the sense of leadership in scouting, and I was also a bit deaf or blind to the notion of one's faith being something that was to communicate to others. So I didn't really understand evangelization as a youngster, and as I became a young adult, I didn't wake up to that until college. And so all along the way, though, those same values of scouting were informing my movement toward being a priest. It all fit, but it had I didn't have that kind of broader view of things that would have accompanied, I guess, the next few steps had things worked out better for me and within that particular scout troop. And I'm not trying to blame anybody for that. I'm just saying that's just the circumstances that I had. And so looking back, it was kind of ironic. I don't even know that I was ordained a priest by the time I was made the chaplain for scouts. I think an opening was made. I was still a deacon, or else I was just a priest. I don't know. But so I haven't known priesthood without scouting, actually. So, and over the years, we've, excuse me, we've had a lot of retreats and things like that. And it's only through that it dawned on me exactly how all these pieces fit together. And so it was kind of over the years kind of unpacking that puzzle, if you will, and seeing how, all along, being a scout at heart, having a kind of a sense of contribution, a sense of being, and I couldn't have articulated this at the time, being a contributing citizen is so not cynical. Now, I don't know if you know what I mean by that. There's a lot of cynicism in the world. The Scouts are anything but cynical because we have a sense of hope and optimism because we're investing in youngsters. Wow. So, we're believing in their potential even when they don't necessarily see it in themselves yet. And so how not cynical that is in a world that has cynicism. Similarly with the church, in that we're preaching the gospel and we're calling to people to repent and believe, and so that's anything but cynical, you know. So, you know, I think there's so many positive things, and the whole framework of participating with young people in an environment, even if it's an indoor environment, but so much of the outdoor environment activities pulls them or offers them something so helpful and healthy for them. You know, similarly, when we have, so for me, the scout retreats that we've done, the youth activities that I've done, they're basically the same kind of thing. Just one has a scout label to it, and the other is just what I'm doing with the youth of the parish. So, so they intermix really well that way. So, and again, I think the point about, you know, you get a lot from being a Life Scout, and I can recognize there's a little incompleteness there, but you know, at this point in life, I can say, well, that's all the more reason to finish what you start for the rest of it. So there you go. Anyway, so that's my take on it.
How about another question that you, all three of you, could kind of answer? And knowing your position in the church, in the Catholic Church, where you sit in the Catholic Church today, if you were to guide parents, say you're talking to a parent, and either they're asking you a question like, hey, I'm looking for, or what are you hearing from a parent that you might say, have you looked at scouting? Because what I'm thinking is this: we heard from Dylan today how active they are going out to the schools to recruit and say, do you want to shoot bows and arrows? Do you want to shoot guns? Do you want kids come home? I want to shoot arrows. I want to shoot guns. Gets them excited. From each of you, what do you think is that thing that the parent would be excited to hear about from your from your knowledge of scouting, from where you see Catholic scouting is? What is it that we should be talking to the parents about, or you would talk to the parents about? Is my question clear enough? Nods. Okay, good. Somebody.
Briefly, I can say, do you want these values in your children to be fostered? That's one way to put it. And do a good turn daily. It's like, how many parents don't want their kids to do a good turn daily, you know? And again, that notion of, do you want your child to be able to set a goal and in more than 2 steps get to that goal? And I think, you know, I'd like to think that they would do that, and also, you know, trusting that the values that are fostered there do accompany the values of our faith as well. So those are the kind of things I think that I would emphasize, but I don't know.
Well, for me right now, just like in our diocese, I have found that I don't know if we have any troops at all that are sponsored by the Catholic Church anymore. And so that's one of the challenges I'm being faced with. If I could now try to get in, like you said, got to talk to the bishop or other priests. Well, I found that I've had some interest through the Knights of Columbus, that they sometimes are interested in sponsoring a troop. So that would be some places to start. But so as for what a parent would ask me right now, there's not enough troops in Scouts on the coast that I'm thinking of. That we got to get started. We're going to have to do a lot of thinking how to at least get troops started. Can we talk to some of the Catholic churches about starting a Catholic troop? Then you're going to have to find leaders that are interested or want to be leaders. So that's why I'll probably be trying to ask you guys a bunch of questions, these challenges, how to do that. But that's like, how do we get more people through the whole nation to be involved with just scouting in general? You know, that we got to get that done, and then you can introduce Catholic scouting to them. So, okay.
Is the appeal that opportunity for having this environment of intentionality of creating virtue and building up ways that these young people can really engage and learn skills that they can use for the rest of their life. I think the thing that we live in a culture of we're supposed to be even more communicating, but the culture of screens and has created this disconnect of the ability for communication and socialization, and the reality of instead of looking at something on the screen, of being in nature, and that I find on my day of rest, if I get outside and walking and just enjoying the beauty, or hiking, or some of my more recent vacations have been going to national parks with Brother Priest. And that's something I've never really done until recently. And it's so good for the spirit and the soul and the amazing beauty of creation. And is that part of the Scouts that is so enriching for our parents with young children. I think one of the things that we struggle with as a church and is the great good and virtue of team sports and the effort and time to work as a team on the field or on the basketball court. But that with travel teams, that the degree of time and effort that's put into practice in the games and the weekends away has created almost like that's the most important thing of young people's free time, even more so than their faith or the practice of their learning about their Catholic religion. So instead of sort of their Catholic faith and coming for religious instruction being the first thing, it's almost becomes the last thing. And are we in an environment of we're competing for the free time of young people? And what is it about Scouts that makes it the scouting difference that it's worth parents' time than the sports teams? And maybe your kids did both and did it well, but it seems like there are a lot of competing things going on for the parents and their children. And at least as a parish priest, what gets squeezed out is the practice of their Catholic faith and being involved in Catholic activities and I think is scouting as well, to the degree that you're having to compete against being on sports teams if the children show any athletic ability, that they could be on a travel team.
One other thing I wanted to add was I want to echo the value that we recognize in the religious emblems that we have and the quality of those programs. And they really are substantially good programs. And when I was in Scouts, I hadn't even heard of them. I didn't know that there was anything specific about the Catholic faith that was a part of Scouting in any sense, any connection. So I knew of no connection. I didn't find a contradiction. I didn't know of any connection at all. So, that's one thing I would certainly communicate to parents, is that the religious emblems program is huge. It's interesting. I think on the schedule it says it has K Kite on this section, and I think that's for Chris Kite, Father Chris Kite. Father Chris, well, he was on one of our retreats a million years ago, and so I so much would have wished that he could have speak with it, but he has a funeral today, so he couldn't make it. But just the kind of the kind of encounters that you have, and the kind of seeds that are sown with the various activities. Wow, how valuable they can be, and those are just wonderful aspects of what parents don't know that their kids are going to experience. But yeah, of course, the things that one would learn in that kind of an environment of the outdoor activity and such is so much more effective than a talking head speaking to you, or what you'd hear from just kind of a lecture. We can learn from that too, but how much more impressionable and applicable things are as they're learned in such a natural environment.
The next question's kind of unfair, I think, but it'll be interesting to see where you can take it. It's similar to the parents, what we just talked about. Now put leaders in there. What is it that you would say to a potential leader, or a person that you would look at and say, I think you could be a scout leader? Like someone looked at you at some point and said, I think you could be a deacon, right? What is it you would say to that person who maybe not have a scout background, but they are Catholic, and you think they could be helpful in youth ministry, the Catholic scouting youth ministry? I think it's a really hard question, but maybe the Holy Spirit will help you out here a little bit and toss a little something at you. Does anybody want to start? Because we need leaders. We need leaders, and we always go to, do you have scouting experience, right? But I think there's a real core, we've heard enough testimony here of, I was never a scout, and yet I became a leader. There's a gentleman who, well, that's not fair, but Harvey Carter, he's not here with us. Harvey did an awful lot with the Nashville Dives and at the national level as well, too, for a Catholic Committee on Scouting. He had no daughters. Now, he had a rich youth scouting experience. He started 4 different troops with all daughters, no sons, all daughters. That's what I meant to say, all daughters. So that's another flavor of a person who stayed in it. So we need to look for leaders. We need to look for good Catholic leaders, men and women. What is it you would say to them that about the scouting program that might tick for them, that they might want to get involved with it? Does anybody have a thought? And if it's a hard question, you can say, that's a really hard question.
I guess to be a good leader, you got to be a good father, and so you have to look for people that who you may see are good fathers to their family. And then with that, to show them the positive things. Where, on our own experience, what scouting does is public speaking. I mean, there's opportunities that, as a scout, you're going to have to get up in front of your troop and speak and talk. Well, that helps you for the future when you become a speaker when we're older. Teamwork, problem solving. These are things that we need to be able to carry on to be good, workers. Those are the very things if you have a job, a company, and what kind of values are you looking into for people that can, solve problems and work together as a team, and that's what makes us all for a better society. So if somehow you can try to inspire people that are, good fathers to say these are the things that we want to impress upon these young individuals, that's what we would like to do. How do we try to pull them away from their cell phones and doing everything on just screen time and stuff like that, instead that there's other things that they need to do. So, I know this is all things you all have talked about, but that's just my thoughts. Anybody else?
Say a few things. I think I might begin simply asking the person about whoever may have been a big influence on them in their youth apart from their parents, and take note of that as a kind of starting point. I think often enough there'd be somebody, and I look back at my scout leader, and he was an important person in my youth, as much as in any adult apart from my parents, and so that's a big role. And so, in a way, starting from what that person's own experience of leadership was as a young person to what would you like your legacy to be, in a sense, like what kind of fruitfulness are you looking for, and could that be then the fruitfulness that comes from engagement with young people in the service of fostering the environment that scouting offers. So I think that's probably the way I would approach it if I saw leadership skills in a person with kind of the right circumstance to be a leader, a scout leader. So I think that'd be my approach.
I'm just wondering, from the question of, do we look at scouting in a proactive way of parishes actively and intentionally saying we're going to create, if there isn't a troop or a pack, of creating that, or encouraging pastors to parishes or schools to sponsor packs and troops. And I'm just thinking in the Diocese of Lexington, I don't know what the history of the troops at the different Catholic parishes are, if some of them have died out. For instance, in Woodford County, we have two very strong parishioners who have sons in the scout troop with the Methodists. And so that's because they're strong in their faith, and they initiated doing the Parvuli Day with all these boys that's how it just sort of organically happened because of them. And maybe is the question in for us as Catholic committees on scouting, are we to be proactive, reaching out to pastors and parishes and schools and saying, this is a great way to empower and encourage your families with children, is the scouting movement. And to encourage them, if you all don't have a troop, to join the troop or the pack in your community. And that we have these religious emblems. And so none of that is being done. I don't know if other parishes, if we have sort of this intentionality across parishes when there's no troop with that parish, of encouraging parents to do that. And so I'm just thinking out loud, as part of that question of raising up, of us being more initiating this conversation, saying this is a great way to share our Catholic faith and raise up young people who live a virtuous life and are able citizens and help build up our community.
Yeah, just with that asking a question, a statement here. I don't think it's a conversation necessarily of right away of going to, do you want to start a unit? It's almost like in some of these situations, we need to begin first with, what is your impression of scouting? What do you know about scouting? And having that conversation. It's not like, do you want to become Catholic? It's, you know, do you have what are you looking for? What are you seeking for? What do you know about scouting? So just kind of a statement there. Maybe another minute or two left in this session. Other questions or the things that people's minds?
We go.
Have any of you three seen the brochure that Boy Scouts of America, not Scouting America, has that is for the chartered organization that wants to start, and then how they recruit their key leader? Have you seen that brochure?
No.
It exists. Who do we think is going to be a good scoutmaster? And that scouting experience is not the number one concern. It's a person of good character that you think is going to work well with you. And so it kind of spells this out in a few paragraphs, and then your little group thinks of people, and then you rank them, and then you go visit them with more than one of you making the visit. You don't just call them on the phone and say, "We're going to do this," because they're going to say no. You know, so there is actually a brochure that is James still here?
So I'm familiar that I'm familiar that it exists, and I think as a follow-up, we send this out to everybody. I'm familiar that it exists, but I don't know where to find it right now as you talk to me about that.
It's probably downloadable.
Oh, sure.
But I've also seen it as a handout, because I was, how many people here have been commissioners? Unit commissioner or district commissioner? That's a lot of what we do, is like working with chartered organizations and helping with this kind of thing. So that's maybe why I've seen this and not everyone has, but it exists, so for the benefit. So okay.
We'll get the new link out.
We're gonna make sure we all.
I put it down as a to-do. I put it right beside Jim Gushke's name. Jim Gushke's going to get this link out to everybody. That's exactly what I've done.
Where's Terry? Terry's our email guy.
There we go.
You get it, you tell me where it is and I'll get it out.
All right, well, Jim, is now time for a break, or what do you think?